100,000 years ago, before writing, before agriculture, before anything we would call civilization, a group of humans did something extraordinary. They took the body of someone they loved, dug a shallow pit into the earth, and laid them down with care. Beside the body, they placed a string of shell beads, a handful of red ochre, maybe a stone tool the person had carried their whole life. Then they covered the grave and walked away. Why would they do that? The body could not feel the beads. It could not use the tool. By every practical measure, this was wasted effort, wasted resources, time spent that could have gone towards survival. And yet, humans have been doing this, in one form or another, for at least 100,000 years. Long before anyone wrote down a word. Long before anyone built a permanent home. The question of what we do with our dead may be one of the oldest and most revealing windows into what it actually means to be human. Let's start with the evidence itself, because it is older and stranger than most people realize. At a site called Qafzeh cave in what is now Israel, archaeologists uncovered the remains of a child buried roughly 100,000 years ago, with the antlers of a deer placed carefully across the chest. At Skhul cave nearby, a body was found with a boar's jaw resting in the hands. These are not accidental arrangements. Antlers do not fall onto a buried body and arrange themselves across a ribcage. Someone placed them there, deliberately, as part of a ritual whose exact meaning is lost to us, but whose intention is unmistakable. This means that even before modern humans had spread across the globe, before complex language as we understand it may have even fully emerged, someone was already treating death as something that required more than just disposal, something that demanded ceremony. And the practice did not stop with our species. In 2013, researchers exploring a nearly inaccessible cave system in South Africa called Rising Star discovered something that would upend assumptions about who was capable of this kind of behavior. Deep within the cave, reachable only through a chute so narrow that researchers had to recruit small-bodied cavers to fit through it, they found the remains of at least 15 individuals of a previously unknown hominin species named Homo naledi. Homo naledi had a brain about a third the size of a modern human's. By many traditional measures of intelligence, this was not a creature anyone expected to engage in symbolic behavior. And yet, the location of the remains posed a serious problem for conventional explanations. The chamber was incredibly difficult to reach. There was no evidence the bodies had washed in or been dragged in by predators. The deliberate placement, the difficulty of access, the sheer number of individuals found in this single hard-to-reach chamber, all of it pointed towards something startling. This looked like a deliberate, repeated act of placing the dead in a specific, hard-to-reach location. If this interpretation holds, and the scientific debate about it continues today, then a small-brained, ancient hominin species was carrying bodies into the depths of the earth on purpose, long before Homo sapiens existed. The implications, if true, are staggering. It would mean that the impulse to do something deliberate with the dead, to mark their passing in some structured way, may not even be unique to our species. It may be older than us. It may be something closer to a parallel response that emerged more than once, in more than one kind of human, when the same hard question was faced: what do we do with the people we have lost? Now consider Sungir, a site in Russia dated to roughly 34,000 years ago. Here, archaeologists found the burial of two adolescents laid head to head, covered in an almost unimaginable wealth of ivory beads, an estimated 10,000 of them, each one painstakingly carved by hand. Researchers calculated that producing that many beads using the tools available at the time would have taken thousands of hours of labor. Thousands of hours, dedicated not to hunting, not to shelter, not to anything that helped the living survive the next winter, who could no longer benefit from any of it. Whoever buried those two adolescents made a choice. They chose to take time that could have gone towards survival and pour it instead into ritual, into meaning, into an act that served no one but the dead and the grief of the living. This is the moment where burial practices stop looking like a footnote in prehistory and start looking like a window into the architecture of the human mind. Because what you are looking at, in site after site, across tens of thousands of years and multiple hominin species, is evidence of something psychologists call symbolic thought. The capacity to treat an object, an action, or a person as standing for something beyond its immediate physical reality. A handful of red ochre is not nutrition. It is not shelter. It is a pigment that, when placed on a body, may have represented blood, life, vitality, or rebirth. We cannot know exactly what it meant to the people who used it, but the fact that they used it at all tells us that they were thinking symbolically, that they understood the world not just as a set of physical objects to be used, but as a set of meanings to be expressed. This capacity, this ability to imbue an object or an act with meaning beyond its function, is intimately connected to something else, the awareness of death itself. Many researchers believe that elaborate burial practices are evidence of one of the most unsettling realizations a mind can have: the understanding that the self that exists now will, someday, stop existing. Anthropologists call this mortality salience, the psychological awareness of one's own inevitable death. And the theory, called terror management theory in psychology, suggests that much of human culture, religion, art, the desire to leave a legacy, the rituals we build around death, exist in part as a response to the profound anxiety that this awareness produces. If that theory is correct, then every burial site, every grave good, every carefully placed antler or string of beads is a kind of fossilized anxiety, a frozen moment where ancient humans confronted the most frightening fact about being alive and responded not with despair, but with ritual, with meaning-making, with a refusal to let death be the final, meaningless word. Consider what that means about the people who buried their dead at Sungir, at Qafzeh, possibly even in the depths of the Rising Star cave system. They were not just animals reacting to a corpse the way many other species do, with confusion or avoidance. They were minds capable of imagining a future without themselves in it, and choosing to respond to that terrifying knowledge with care, with art, with ceremony. This single behavior, the choice to bury the dead with intention, may represent one of the very first pieces of evidence for a fully modern human mind. A mind capable of abstract thought, a mind capable of love that persists beyond usefulness, a mind capable of imagining its own end and choosing, in the face of that knowledge, to create something beautiful instead of simply walking away. Every funeral held today, every flower placed on a grave, every name carved into stone so that it might be remembered, traces its lineage back to that moment in a cave in South Africa, or a cliffside burial in the Levant, or a stretch of frozen ground in what is now Russia, where someone looked at the body of a person they loved, and instead of leaving it where it lay, chose to do something else entirely. They chose to mean something by it, and in that choice, made over and over again across hundreds of thousands of years, by multiple species of humans who never met each other, who never spoke the same language, who never shared the same continent, we find one of the deepest and strangest truths about what it means to be human. We are, perhaps before anything else, the species that refuses to let the dead simply disappear. We are the species that insists, against all practical logic, that some things matter more than survival. And we have been insisting on that for at least 100,000 years.